What happens when a Hollywood legend known for her fiery political rants gets utterly destroyed on live TV by a young razor-sharp conservative star? The answer left America speechless. The internet exploded when Cheryl Sarkisian, the iconic singer and progressive activist, stepped onto the debate stage, only to be dismantled piece by Karoline Leavitt, the 25-year-old White House press secretary, who didn't just win the argument, but ended an era. The stage was set for the most explosive, drama-filled political confrontation in modern television history. Millions of viewers across America and beyond had their eyes glued to their screens, eagerly anticipating what was promised to be a fiery clash between two titans of their respective worlds. On one side stood Cheryl Sarkisian, the legendary singer and Hollywood royalty, whose decades-long career had cemented her as not just a musical icon, but a progressive political force. With her impassioned speeches, viral social media rants, and unrelenting criticism of the Trump administration, she had become the darling of the liberal elite, a symbol of resistance, a voice for the marginalized, and a thorn in the side of conservatives. Her fans adored her for her boldness. Her detractors rolled their eyes at what they saw as performative activism from a millionaire celebrity who lived in a bubble of privilege. Yet no one could deny her influence until that night. Opposite her stood Karoline Leavitt, a name that had been steadily rising in political circles, but was still unfamiliar to many outside the conservative movement. At just 25 years old, she had shattered records as the youngest White House press secretary in U.S. history, a role she didn't just occupy but dominated with a poise and precision that belied her age. Unlike Cheryl, whose activism was rooted in emotional appeals and sweeping moral declarations, Leavitt operated like a strategist, cool, calculated, and armed with an arsenal of facts, statistics, and unshakable logic. She didn't just defend Trump's policies. She dismantled opposition arguments with surgical efficiency, leaving her opponents flustered and exposed. This wasn't just a battle of ideologies. It was a collision of two entirely different approaches to persuasion, one built on passion, the other on reason. And from the moment the cameras started rolling, it was clear which one would prevail. The tension in the studio was so thick it could have been cut with a knife. The audience, a carefully curated mix of political junkies, media personalities, and die-hard fans of both women, sat in hushed anticipation. The host, a seasoned moderator known for his ability to stoke debate without losing control, wasted no time in setting the stage for fireworks. His first question was a direct challenge to Cheryl, designed to provoke the kind of emotional response she was famous for. "Cheryl, you've spent years calling Trump's deportation policy a crime against humanity, arguing that it tears families apart and betrays American values. But critics say your stance ignores the rule of law and the economic realities of unchecked immigration. How do you respond?" Cheryl, ever the performer, didn't disappoint. She launched into a dramatic, tear-filled monologue about the plight of immigrants, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine anguish. She spoke of children separated from their parents, of families fleeing violence only to be met with cruelty, of an America that had lost its way. It was the kind of speech that had made her a progressive hero, full of sweeping moral declarations and righteous indignation. The audience, packed with her supporters, erupted in applause, their cheers filling the studio like a wave. For a moment, it seemed like the debate would follow the usual script. Cheryl would dominate with her emotional appeals, her opponent would struggle to counter, and the night would end with another victory for the Hollywood left. But then, Karoline Leavitt took the microphone. What followed wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a masterclass in debate. Leavitt didn't raise her voice. She didn't resort to personal attacks. Instead, she dismantled Cheryl's argument piece by piece with the precision of a chess grandmaster. "Empathy is important," she began, her tone measured but firm. "But empathy doesn't replace enforcement. When we reward illegal immigration, we punish the millions of people who followed the rules, waited their turn, and came here the right way. Is that your idea of justice?" The room fell silent. Cheryl, who had spent years delivering speeches without ever being meaningfully challenged, blinked as if she'd been slapped. Leavitt continued, citing statistics on how illegal immigration depressed wages for American workers, how it strained public resources, how it incentivized human trafficking. Every point was backed by data, every argument structured to leave no room for rebuttal. By the time she finished, the applause from the audience was hesitant at first, then overwhelming. The tide had turned, and it only got worse for Cheryl. The debate shifted to Trump's controversial tariff policies. Cheryl tried to regain control with another emotional appeal, this time focusing on working families crushed by corporate greed. She painted a picture of struggling Americans unable to afford basic necessities because of rising prices, her voice rising to a near shout as she accused the administration of favoring the wealthy over the poor. It was a classic, progressive talking point, one that usually played well with her base. But Leavitt was ready. "Tariffs didn't crush working families," she fired back, her voice sharp but controlled. "They brought back steel jobs to Ohio. They revived dead factories in Pennsylvania. They gave thousands of Americans, real Americans, their livelihoods back. Do you even know what that means for the people who actually live in those communities? Or are you too busy singing about problems you've never had to face?" The audience gasped. Cheryl's face flushed. The camera zoomed in, capturing every micro-expression, the flicker of doubt in her eyes, the tightening of her jaw. She tried to counter, but her words came out disjointed, her usual confidence shattered. Leavitt didn't let up. "You talk about compassion, but where's your compassion for the American workers who lost their jobs because of unfair trade deals? Where's your outrage for the families who watched their towns die because factories moved overseas? Or does your version of justice only apply when it fits your narrative?" By this point, social media was exploding. Clips of the exchange were spreading like wildfire. Hashtags like #HarshLeavittSlay and On Cheryl Exposed were trending, and even neutral commentators were admitting that Cheryl was being outclassed in real time. The debate had become more than just a political showdown. It was a cultural reckoning, a moment that exposed the widening gap between Hollywood activism and the realities of everyday Americans. And then came the knockout blow. The host, sensing the shift in momentum, dropped the question that would seal Cheryl's fate. "Cheryl, years ago, you famously vowed to leave America if Trump won. Yet here you are, still in the country, still criticizing his policies. How do you reconcile that with your credibility as an activist?" Cheryl froze. For the first time all night, she seemed genuinely at a loss for words. She stammered out something about staying to fight for what's right, but it was weak, defensive. Leavitt didn't miss a beat. "You vowed to leave. You didn't. That's not activism. That's a lie," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You made a promise to your fans, to the public, and you broke it. If you want to talk about morality, maybe start with keeping your word." The studio erupted. The audience, once firmly in Cheryl's corner, was now cheering for Leavitt. Cheryl's face was a mask of shock and humiliation. The cameras captured it all. The moment Hollywood's untouchable queen was dethroned by a 25-year-old conservative who refused to play by the old rules. The fallout was immediate and seismic. Within hours, Leavitt became a household name. Her clips racked up millions of views, her Twitter following exploded, and conservative media crowned her the future of MAGA. Young conservatives, especially Gen Z, hailed her as their champion, a CII leader who spoke their language, fought for their futures, and didn't rely on tired emotional appeals to make her case. She was sharp, unapologetic, and media-savvy in a way that resonated with a generation raised on TikTok and viral debates. Meanwhile, Cheryl's reputation took a hit unlike anything she'd experienced in her decades-long career. Her social media was flooded with comments mocking her performance, with even some of her longtime fans expressing disappointment. Stay in your lane. Stick to singing, one viral tweet read. Her concerts, once sold-out spectacles, began seeing dwindling crowds. The media, always hungry for a downfall, ran stories questioning whether her influence had peaked. The debate hadn't just exposed her lack of policy depth. It had revealed a generational shift in how politics was fought and won. But the real question lingers. Was this just one bad night for Cheryl, or the end of an era where celebrities could dictate politics without consequence? The comments are open. Drop your take below. Was Leavitt's victory deserved, or did Cheryl just have an off night? And most importantly, who's next?